What is up? Welcome back. Some coffee. I gotta say the coffee is really good today. Just brewed a little French press. And I had a glass French press for like the last 8 years and I broke it not too long ago. But then my girlfriend got me this really nice like metal Stanley one because she said, good luck breaking that. And I said, all right. Cool, thanks. But it is very nice. Brews good coffee. Anyway. A little interlude is now over. Let's get back to business. So, a couple weeks ago, I recorded a series of videos going over a camera I recently bought, and alright, this is kind of a big day for me. So I thought I'd break out the nice fancy gloves, because I think it's worth that, but then I'm looking at the sheer comedy that is occurring here. This is just, I thought this would be like a nice, like, poignant moment of sincerity and like respectful appreciation, but instead we got the fucking Three Stooges on my hand over here. Anyway, let's talk about the thing that has arrived. I got a package. That was before I had the mic set up, so I wanted to re-record part of that. I'll include parts of the original video as well because it has like my more initial reactions. Ooh, mama. Oh, that's great. That's a good sign. Off to a healthy start there. Are you kidding me? I can't even have one nice exposure. What a just absolute bummer that was. Oh my god. But since that time, I've shot probably 3 or 4 rolls of film through this camera, so my opinion has a little more validation, I guess, a little bit more use case. So I feel like it's a little bit better for me to talk about it now. And the camera that I would like to talk about is this. This is a Cotax S2, and I think it just might be the perfect camera. Okay, it's working now. I just had to move the mirror, but it does fire, so that's cool. That is, boom. So, let's break it down a little bit. The Cotax S2 was produced and released in 1992, and it was to kind of commemorate 60 years, as you can tell here, of Cotax making cameras. Interesting facts about this camera: it is a fully mechanical camera, and that alone is fantastic to me. But the amazing thing about this fully mechanical camera is the top shutter speed. 1/4000th of a second. Yes, that's insane to me, but yes, it does fire up to 1/4000th of a second, with the flash sync speed being 1/250th, which is like stupid fast. Typically on a mechanical shutter, you're getting like 1/60th. I think maybe on like the FM3, it's 250. That's a really high mark for flash sync speed. So 1/4000th on a mechanical shutter in a form that's this compact is pretty great. And how does it achieve that? It achieves that with a very lightweight shutter system, very similar to something that you would see in an ME Super, or very similar to something you would see in this P30 that I have here dissected. Obviously this is very different, but the general principle is still the same, i.e. the blades travel like so. This one's not going to work because why would it? Now the interesting thing about this, you'll notice that the shutter mechanism here, the timing gears and all that, kind of adds a little bit of bulk to this side of the camera, and you'll notice that is almost exaggerated in this, as there's so much more space on this side than this side where the film canister sits, and then the take-up side over here is much larger, and I would venture to guess that's because the shutter mechanism sits about right here. So that being said too, it is very ergonomic in the sense that there's a lot more area for you to grip here, and all of your control mechanisms are right here as you would need them. So basic controls of the camera, it's very simplistic. This is the most boiled down version of a camera that you can think of, and for that I absolutely adore it. As I said, it is fully mechanical. The only electrical components is the metering system, which, contrary to a lot of cameras at the time, it was a spot meter. Everything about this camera screams purist. mechanical, no autofocus, no auto exposure, no center weighted meter, no cumulative meter. Everything is so boiled down. Now the spot meter is basically going to take exactly what's in front of you. Whatever you point the lens at in the middle, that's what's in exposure. So for instance, we're looking at this here. If I wanted to take this picture right here, if I'm metering for here, this is going to be underexposed, that's going to be overexposed. If I wanted to get everything kind of on exposure, I would have to take the meter reading from here and from here and from here and kind of combine all of that and put it together and then formulate an exposure based off of that. And that is why I love this camera, because it doesn't have the electrical assistance, it doesn't have the auto exposure, it doesn't have the autofocus. Everything has to be manually operated. It creates so much more of a physical interface for me to use this camera. And it also it causes me to have to slow down for a minute, to take my time to formulate an image and to capture it that way. And that's so contrary to how I've been taking pictures lately, that it's really shifted my perspective on it in a very meaningful way. And it's something that I've really been enjoying lately, which is why I wanted to talk about it. So going down into the basics of the camera, we have a self timer here. It's a 10-second self timer. When you pull it over and initiate, you do that by just firing the camera. The mirror will go up, the shutter will remain closed up until the 10-second point is done. Then it will fire. There is a stop down lever here, which is very helpful. The lens release button sits up here, and it is a rotation like that. This is a Contax Yashica mount lens, which I think is an MM mount. And I just have a Yashica lens here because this was much more affordable than the Contax Zeiss lenses. Although those are very sharp and very good lenses, they're very expensive, and I just wanted to get something to test it out. And this cut the mustard for that. On the top here, we have our shutter speed dial. As I mentioned previously, top speed of 1/4000th of a second, rotation all the way down to bulb and a 1 second exposure, flash sync speed of 1/250th of a second. Over here on the shutter button, we have two settings. We have a lock, which is the red, and a black, which is the fire. And I really enjoy this as somebody who takes a lot of photos of lens caps and the insides of camera bags. Having a little lock mechanism as a safety catch is very nice. The advanced lever itself is just magnificent in my opinion. It is a single piece construction with a nice little form here for all of the different rotations of the thumb. And then also it does the lock in place deal, which I really like because it just makes it feel compact and solid. Up here, there's a switch to lock out the take-up spool, which means you can do double exposures pretty easily, or multi-exposures. And over here, you have your frame counter, which I gotta say is probably one of my favorites in the way that it kind of shapes around the advanced lever and is just right there. So if you're shooting, you can kind of look very briefly and see what frame you're at. I find it to be very useful, and it's magnified just enough to add a little bit more detail. Over here you have your ISO wheel, and it's a very simple operation as well. You just press down on this little button back here, and then that gives free rotation. The range is from 12 all the way to 6400, which is a really great range. On the front here you have this that screws off, and this is your flash sync port, which I gotta say is one of my favorites, just because I like the fact that it screws on and off. Little dust cover. I'm probably never going to use this, but it's nice to have, and it's nice to know that this will screw on tightly so I don't have to worry about gunk getting in there over time. The hot shoe sits right up here, and what I really enjoy about this is it does sit flush with the top of the camera. If you were to drop it on its top, it's not going to bend or break or anything like that. Like, it's pretty flush. It sits well. The light metering system is kind of weird, but in a good way. Basically what it will say is it will show you what speed you're on, and that will be the blinking number, and it's the shutter speed you're at. And then the next numbers that it will give you is either the range of exposure. So say for right now it's saying 30 and 15, which in between 30 and 15 is what I'm gonna want to expose for this. If you're only seeing one blinking number, that means you're on exposure. We have a little window back here for the film that you're shooting, which I find really fantastic. And then in here we have the shutter, take-up spool, and again you can see kind of the spacing difference between the two. The thing I like about the window though is that it removes the need for there to be a memo slot here for the film. It just simplifies this back cover and gives way for this nice cohesive leather build that they have, and this is very, very nice leather. It feels like luxury when you're shooting this camera. On the bottom we have another titanium plate. We have the film rewind button, so just click that in and it will again disengage the spool for you to rewind the film. We have a battery compartment. This takes 2 LR44 batteries, and again that is only to use the light meter with. The camera will work fine without batteries. And that's pretty much it. There's not a whole lot to talk about. There's not a whole lot to break down. It is a very basic camera. I will include some of my initial thoughts from unboxing it and all of that now. And yeah, like I said, those were like initial, didn't have the best audio, and still don't have the best audio now, working on it, but I'm pretty happy with the setup now. But anyway, I've shot, like I said, a few rolls through this, probably 3 or 4 at this point, and I've really had nothing but positive experiences with the camera. It just feels good to use. It looks really good, I think. It feels like a stylistic decision, but it's also incredibly versatile. For that, I really enjoy it. Now, if you wanted to get one with a better light metering system, there was the S2B, which was released in 1994, and I believe that has an upgraded metering system. They're a little bit more expensive than the S2, but they do exist. And this was also discontinued in the year 2000. So it had a brief 8-year run, and it's really like a swan song to just standard 35mm SLRs. It's pushing the limits of what that means, in my opinion. I might make another piece on this just to kind of wax more lyrical about it, but for now this is just kind of my run-of-the-mill thoughts, breakdown of the camera, why I like it so much, and some of the functions that it brings to the table. So with that being said, I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you learned something. Can't recommend this camera enough if it's something you're into. It really works for me. It might not work for you. That's totally fair, but it has really helped me out a lot, and I've really enjoyed my time with it. So looking forward to shooting with it more. Thank you for watching. I'll catch you on the next one.